Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Art of the Game. I'm Cass, this is Reese, and I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. Many of you would have come across him in the social space. He's the founder of the Social Sandwich. He's a good friend of ours and is not afraid to tell it how it is. So welcome to the podcast, Edwin Smith.
Hey everyone, everyone you too. Thanks for having me. Honored to be one of the first guests on your show, and hopefully I can not fully embarrass myself and kick things off for you guys in the right way. But thanks for having me.
How good? How good? The Social Sandwich. What a name. What are some of the other names you get called actually before we kick things off?
So Social Sandwich, obviously the business name. So then I try and do like Sanger as like for short, like a social sanger, like a sausage sanger, kind of like real Aussie vibes. I'm trying to call people that like make like a little community and call people sandwichers. Thanks sandwiches for following. I'm not sure if it's quite caught on yet. But then I get a lot of different names in terms of Edwin because it's a hard name. People are like, what do you mean Edwin? Like they call me Edward, or I got Alvin the other day, or Elvin, or Irwin is another one. So very rarely do I actually get my actual name, which is and these are people like they know who I am as well, and they, one was a client that I've done workshops for, and she was like, thanks so much, Edward. And I'm like, that's not my name. You called me Edwin in the last email. Like, how do you get this wrong?
That's good gear.
Lucky you've got an easy last name there. They can't really stuff that one up.
Yeah,
I go, Edwin, okay, yep, Edwin, and Smith. You got that? Yeah.
And for those that don't know, you are, or are sort of just tuning in, you are someone that wears a party shirt pretty much to every meeting, every Zoom call. How many shirts have you got?
I've never actually counted them because they're constantly being added to. Whenever I get like a voucher for a clothes shop for Christmas, it's all right, let's go in and see what they've got in the way of party shirts. So it'd be about 30 plus, I reckon. Some kind of varying levels of, how often and how much I actually want to wear them. Like some real kind of dodgy old like Lowe's Hawaiian shirts that they're real stiff as well, so they're not very comfy to wear. They're not great, but yeah, it was a pretty conscious decision to wear, because I started off being really boring and wearing like all black in
Like Reese.
Are you trying to call me out here? I was actually meant to wear a party shirt, a Hawaiian shirt, and I remembered last night. So I'll get it in the morning, and I apologise. I completely forgot.
Didn't do it, but I think as I started my business, I always talk about, maybe jumping ahead here a little bit, but like always talk about trying to be, a bit like your authentic self online. And, I was wearing these black or white t-shirts, like all jokes aside, like that's what I was doing. And then I was like, well, maybe I should wear like some bright shirts, because I like to talk about the fun side of social and how, for businesses, we can kind of lean into that a bit more. And it also gives people something to, if I'm meeting them for the first time, they give them something to talk about, and you can kind of go, oh, it's a bright shirt, and this is the story behind it. And so it seems like I'm really fun and whatnot. It's actually like quite strategic to wear them wherever I kind of go. But honestly, the worst part is that a lot of them are the short sleeves. And so when winter rolls around, I just sit at my desk freezing because I don't have many long sleeve party shirts. I'm just cold all the time.
Could be a new business venture for you.
Long sleeve party shirts. Yeah, it could be. Do you want to go into business with me?
I've got my party shirt happening here, so I'll happily join in.
I'm boring in black, but anyways.
Edwin, I was going to do the honours of giving everyone a bit of an overview of your background, but I feel like you should just do it because you know you better than I know you. So why don't we start there?
Yeah, it's probably a good point. So I've had like a pretty weird long journey to get to where I am. The long story short is studied sports media, was working in the kind of sports world, kind of straight out of uni, worked for like Tennis Victoria, and then a bit of work for the Australian Open for a year, for a season, a little bit of work actually at Cricket Australia. but then kind of went into the TV world. So yeah, spent probably most of my career, I guess, at Channel 10. So I was there for about 4.5 years, I think, where I was, one of the main social media producers there, running the accounts for some pretty big shows like Australian Survivor, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here were my two kind of babies that I ran for 3 years, and really learned a lot over the years of, how to make interesting, engaging content, and, working along on those shows, just learned a whole lot of stuff and had some pretty cool experiences. Like with I'm a Celebrity, I got to go to Africa a couple of times, and so, literally working in the middle of the African jungle while, driving to work and zebras are walking past you kind of thing. Like it was pretty wild. The 3 a.m. starts were not so fun, but the other part of it was awesome. And yeah, so kind of from there decided to I was going to go freelance. And so a lot of people in TV kind of go freelance and then move from show to show. And so work on different shows. Like they kind of pick and choose which shows they want to work on. What I didn't realize was COVID was coming. And so my dream of traveling and working on cool different shows, like the last show I did was Love Island, and so that was in Fiji, which was pretty cool. But then basically straight after that, COVID hit, and so that was when I decided I should, I've always thought I'd like to be my own boss, make my own hours, do my own work, do the things I want to do, and yeah, kind of started the Social Sandwich right when COVID started, and gave it a bit of a crack to see how it could go. And yeah, 3 years later, I'm still here and haven't gone broke yet, touch wood, so it's all right.
So talk to us just a bit about the Social Sandwich then. Obviously it's your freelance business, it's kind of your day in, day out now, but what other than COVID and not being able to go and travel the world, what made you start the business, and what is like the driving force behind it at the moment? Why would people know the Social Sandwich, or why would they come across you on the social?
Yeah, so it has changed over time, which I think all kind of businesses do, where, I started with the idea that I would work a lot with small businesses, and I still do work with small businesses because I kind of thought that, with the knowledge that I had, I could help out. I spent a lot of time with my parents. They run small businesses all their life, like kind of owners, and they just never really quite knew what to do, the right places to be, what things to post, when, all of that, those kind of questions. So initially it was, I'm going to create a business to help those small businesses. It has kind of evolved into a bit of that still, but also working with some bigger jobs and clients because, yeah, to be pretty frank, a lot of small businesses don't really have the money to invest in the social media side of things. And so, I guess I had to kind of pick and choose because I get a lot of satisfaction from, helping the little guy out and getting them, upskilled, whether it's a local hairdresser or a butcher or something like that. But then, still need to have those kind of bigger clients that, pay the bills ultimately. And, I still enjoy doing that work. So whether that's, online companies, or I'm working with a building company at the moment that's probably one of my bigger clients. So do a bit of everything from kind of consulting, so telling people what to post on the different platforms and how to do it and the best practice there, and a little bit of the actual day-to-day hands-on management of pages, which I don't do much of that anymore because it's just time consuming, but do a bit of that. And so I guess ultimately it's to try and use the knowledge that I have to help people with their social media. And I think I have a different perspective to what a lot of people do, and especially a lot of people in social media just come from a marketing world, so they see it as this like promotional tool, where I see it more as a tool to like engage people and make interesting content, not just hey, go here and buy my product, which is my kind of pet peeve on social media.
I love your like tone of voice and like the way that you kind of talk about social, and your icks and your pet peeves and all those kinds of things that most people would think, oh, this is like the way that you should approach social, or like here's the top 10 things that you should be doing on social to make sure you get a result. I love how you kind of break that down and make it really like quirky and simple and kind of just no bullshit about it. Like really, this is the stuff that you're hearing. This is why it's crap. This is what you should be doing instead. So I'm loving that tone coming through. It's like a real refreshing to see that. But we are going to take you back to that little headline and blog kind of world and ask you what you do think your top 10 trends are on social media at the moment. And I think everyone from marketing, social content, everyone's always looking for those kind of checklist things they can refer back to in their jobs and be like, yep, all right, I'm doing that well, as kind of validation for their role. But yeah, I just love your take on it. So I'd love to hear, I guess, what should we say, top 10 trends or top 10, well, not even top 10, top whatever. What's your top tips for those operating in the social space at the moment?
Well, firstly, thanks for the nice compliments about my content. That was really why I came on the show, just to inflate the ego a little bit and get me through the next couple of weeks with some compliments. But, you know, in terms of like the way that I present my stuff, it was, again, quite a strategic decision of I didn't want to be someone that spoke in lots of jargon or didn't give actionable advice. Like I really like just being like, here's the things you can actually do, rather than, you know, I see a lot of people, they're like, just add value to your audience. And I was like, yeah, but what does that actually mean? Like you can say all these things and speak really kind of top line about social, but a lot of people just want exactly what you're saying, a couple of things to do right now that's gonna make a difference. So yeah, appreciate the compliment. Okay, top trends that are happening on social. Okay. Obviously, a big one is video content at the moment. But the kind of exciting thing right now is for businesses, for brands, is video is easier than ever to create, make, and edit through things like Instagram Reels. It's also become, the nature of the world is we're very distracted and we're very time poor. So it doesn't have to be a 3-minute video. It can be a 10-second video. You can get some amazing results through, that kind of short form video piece across like all social platforms now have that, short form component. Big thing as well that, I like to talk about is, for most businesses or just anyone on social is, and this is kind of like the TikTok effect, I think, is we like to see real people. So we like to see and interact with people. And so, having, a face behind a brand and having like someone that you can recognize and get to know them and trust what they're talking about, is really big, because even just in terms of the, the raw engagement that you can get from, not having someone versus having a person. Like we see a person, we stop, we look, we engage, and it's, that I see is really important. Even with my content, like I made a shift probably a year ago from more of the like Canva style templates of here's your tips on how to do the socials to like me talking in front of the camera, which I still don't feel like super confident and comfortable doing that. But I recognized that when I was doing that, I was getting, 4 to 5 times the engagements than in the graphic style, and people, get to know me and know my vibe and can see my hopefully amazing collection of party shirts when I'm doing that. So that's a big thing, just the real people. And probably kind of further to that, the rough and raw, more authentic style of content we're seeing people are relating more to, where I think on these social platforms a few years ago, it had to be like really like tight and polished and look really perfect. Whereas now we're seeing audiences tend to relate a bit better to, something that is maybe not as perfect. Maybe it's like 80% rather than getting to that 100% of like perfect and polished. And so they're the kind of big ones that I talk about. And, ultimately it just comes back to the content. Like, is this content interesting and engaging for the audience?
On the flip side of all of that, what are the top like 3 or 4 things that you're seeing that are your like biggest icks on social?
Okay, number one, I'm glad you asked. Grids on Instagram, which anyone that's followed me for a while, I rant about them all the time because, I still see people that are like, here's the best way to present your Instagram, which, when I talk about grids, it's referring to like those, 9 image photos that they're split up across 9 different photos. And it looks nice and pretty on your profile, But for the user, when they're scrolling through Instagram, it's like an awful experience seeing, the knee of someone on their feed, and they're like, what is this? They're just going to scroll past it, going to get terrible engagement, probably lose followers by doing that style of post. So, definitely the grid. And, I think it's hard because people know that I dislike grids, as it's almost part of my brand by now, I think, which is always weird to think about, which I can see you kind of smiling about. But I'm not against, having a nice aesthetic on your feed. And I think, as part of like the branding, we've got to have some consistency, with our colors and with our fonts, and, to have that consistency. But the way that I think about it is like each post on our social feed needs to do a job of engaging an audience, and we can't rely on people going to our profile to see all of those posts together. And the only people that's going to make feel good is probably us. And it's like, well, it's not about us, it's about our audience. So that's probably my biggest trigger. But yeah, it's probably about 30 other things that I could rattle off that annoy me, because like I said, I'm not afraid to kind of say the things that I don't like, because I feel like it's people are kind of scared to say those things. So
yeah, I mean, we're conditioned to say the things that we do like and make everyone feel really great and inflate their ego, but 90% of the time we are lying.
What about in the sporting world, Edwin? What are you seeing that frustrates the hell out of you? Because I know we see eye to eye on quite a few things. I mean, for me personally, birthday posts are very well outdated.
Halftime posts.
Halftime posts in terms of having the score on a graphic that's basically redundant 5-10 minutes later in the feed, or doesn't get seen till 2 days later. What are your workarounds there? Why is a birthday post Gonski? Why not put a halftime graphic up with the score on it? Like, what's your view on those two things?
Yeah, I think we've seen, in particular on Instagram, but probably all the platforms now, Facebook, Instagram, like TikTok even more so, even Twitter to an extent. But, in particular on Instagram, we're seeing now that the posts are kind of living for longer. So, used to think of like the lifespan of a post of say like 12 hours, you'd kind of post it at 4:00 in the afternoon, and by that night, it basically wouldn't be seen again. But now it's like you post at 4:00 and that post could still be being served to someone a couple of days later. And, for anyone playing along at home, like get out your phone and look at Instagram, and I'd almost guarantee you would see a post that's from a day or two ago. And so we have to be conscious that it's like not as time sensitive as what it once was. And, it has changed a lot over the years, Instagram. And so, doing things like a score graphic that is out of date within a few minutes. You can still have the score in a post, but I think just thinking about, can you use a moment from the game, or like, a really great photo that maybe is still going to be engaging and interesting a few days later, regardless if the score is, has happened or not. And, so I think that just being conscious of the time frames of things. And I saw a post this morning. There was like a festival down here in Wollongong, yours and ours, a little bit, not sport, but it's obviously somewhat related. And they announced their lineup, and I saw the lineup on my Insta, and then the next post that I saw from them was a post that was like, our lineup's coming out tomorrow, save this post and like tell us how excited you are. And I was like, and so they gave that post about 12 hours to kind of live, and I was getting served it the next day. I'd already seen the lineup, so that post was just like redundant, like you said. So we need to be conscious of that, like the lifespan now of posts.
Yeah, I think in sport though, and obviously you've worked in sport at your time at 10 as well. Back when we were in early days of sport as well, it was very much about like play by play, moment by moment, just getting it out as fast as you could as part of like a chronological algorithm. And now that strategy has completely gone out the window. However, there are still moments in a game and in the live match window that are really important for us, obviously, to call out and to harp on. So is it more around the tone and the making that moment relevant for people who will see it a couple of days later, or are we just at the point where it's like, if that post is seen by someone a couple of days later, is it still not worth doing because capitalizing on the live window is still really important? So how, if you get what I mean, like the strategy kind of still needs to be similar, and like the fact that you should be capitalizing on your live window, but how do you make the content that happens through that live window relevant for people who don't see it in that kind of, you know, whistle to whistle period? Yeah, I guess that was a big challenge for us.
Yeah, I think the way that, you know, I kind of would approach it is just having that in mind, and when it's the way you kind of frame, you know, either the asset that you're using or your caption. And, you know, if it is a halftime score, you know, you don't necessarily say the score, you just say, you know, let's maybe like highlight a moment from the game or a player that was really big in the first half, and kind of say, you know, how good was this bloke? Or, you know, something that if someone does see it a few days later, it's still, you know, it isn't out of date. So you're not mentioning the score, you're not mentioning that like time sensitive information, because you're right, like you still need to get out those moments, and the fans want that live. But I think it's just how you position it, you know, the text you use on the score graphic, or even not even having a score graphic, maybe it's just, you know, 10 of the best photos as a little gallery from the first half. And so, you know, regardless of what's happened, you can kind of see that. And like I was even thinking about this the other day with when the Ashes was on, and I saw, I think it was Cricket Australia, they put up an Insta video of Jamie Lyon, that's funny, Nathan Lyon, so weird what I'm thinking about. I hate Jamie Lyon.
Para.
Yeah, I'll never forgive him for leaving Parramatta. Yeah, Nathan Lyon, and it was, you know, in that run chase, and he hit a 4 when they needed like 7 runs to go, and it was like the way that they framed the caption was, you know, what a shot by Lyon, or the GOAT, only 7 runs to win. And by the time I saw that, we'd already won. And so in that instance, you could just say, what a shot by the GOAT. Like, you don't need to say 7 runs to win, because, you know, or if maybe you do, maybe you go back and edit it if like you really wanted to. But I think just to save us the time, you kind of just go, you know, highlight that great moment, but not kind of refer too much about the, you know, that time sensitive information.
I think, yeah, I mean, when we're at the NRL, especially around our major events, you know, grand finals, state of origin, you know, we'd put out a halftime post, and, you know, more often than not, it'd be a really great image, and we'd put the score in the caption, and then we'd come back literally 15, 20 minutes later and just basically change the whole caption, you know, remove the score and update that. So you're still capitalising on those that are seeing the post at halftime and sort of want to offer their opinion, because everyone has an opinion on who's winning, the refs, etc. But I guess by the time someone else, you know, is seeing that post later, it's not talking about the halftime score. It's, you know, speaking specifically to that image or the whole game itself.
Yeah, and I think that different platforms obviously play a role in this as well. So like there are things that you'd be doing, say on Twitter in a live coverage environment versus things that you'd be doing on Facebook or Instagram, stories, you know, reels and TikTok. So like I think that the breadth of platforms that we have access to and the way that they serve content obviously needs to be tailored in the live sport window, and they should be treated like accordingly to the content output on that platform. So I think you should, as a sporting organisation who is for someone who is managing the output of live sport, have a think about what actually does need to go out during that live window, and then what actually can be held and used across the different content formats and platform formats that play better into the way that they're serving content on that algorithm. So I think it's just being mindful of different platform approaches as well.
Yeah, I mean, even things like countdowns, you know, they're great, but, you know, 3 days to go, I'm seeing on game day most of the time now, or a day before. So it's so tricky, and I guess it's, you know,
Balance.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, and you've got to really focus on more of the evergreen content that can live on past 12 hours, 24 hours.
But the debate also could be like, who is more important for you at that point in time? Is it more important for you to get that message out because it is 3 days to go and you need to buy tickets, or broadcasters won't tune in? Or is it more important for the person who might casually come across it 3 days later and not be your main target audience anyway? So there's obviously always going to be that balance of being like, it might not be right for someone that sees it in 3 days' time, but it's right for now and it's part of the strategy, and we just have to kind of take that as it comes and hope that it does the job that it needs to do in this short window. So I think it's definitely both sides of the story.
I think we underutilise like the archive tool as well. Like you can archive a a post 24 hours later so no one else sees it. It's done its job for the people that have seen it within that time frame.
Yeah.
The next day, archive it, hide it from your feed, whatever you need to do. I think that's also an approach, if you are going to post that type of content, something to consider.
I think it's just it's being aware as well of the this new social media world that we're in, where there's posts are surviving, living for longer, and just being aware of like the intricacies of it, and things that worked 3 years ago might not work now, and so just being aware of those changes and being able to kind of be quite flexible as like a social media producer, as someone who works in this job. Like, you do have to kind of always be like evolving your strategy and moving with the times, because otherwise, if you keep doing the same thing we've done for years, it's like just not good enough anymore.
Just on the different platforms as well, I know you talk a bit about TikTok as well as a platform and as part of like brand social strategies and stuff. So, is it too late for someone to join like for a brand to be on TikTok? Like, has that kind of window passed? Or if not, what's the strategy around it? Why should people be getting on that as a platform? And what's kind of coming in the TikTok space that would make that really viable for a brand to start investing in as a strategy?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's too late for TikTok. It's not too late for Instagram, right? Like, you can still jump and join Instagram now. What I always say is, imagine if you got on Instagram when it was 3 years old, and now it's, I don't know how old Instagram is, like 12 years old or something. But like, you may as well start and just dip your toe in, is always my thinking, and have a bit of an experiment and see if you can find some traction on there, because it might take you 6-12 months before you kind of find that sweet spot of content that works, because it is, quite a different platform, and there are some certain types of content that only works on TikTok, and it's very specific with the way that content is shown there. It's a bit more, again, it's like really like raw and authentic and real, and it's a bit more quirky and self-aware and silly and fun. It's really just about that, like the entertainment piece. So definitely not too late to get on. I think the really interesting thing that, when you take a step back, think about Facebook of 10 years ago. Like, I remember when I was 15, maybe, it was like, I get to get Facebook. Like, that was like a real treat to look forward to as like a kid of, I could join Facebook and like chat to my mates. Like, this is so cool. And, now Facebook is obviously everyone on there, and it's probably more dominated by like mums and like that kind of, it's an older audience now. But that happened over time, where platform starts off young, and then gradually there's that like mass adoption, and the demographics just get older. Same thing kind of happened and is still happening with Instagram, where it started off really young, and now, using my mum as an example, like, she's on Instagram and loves Instagram, and that's like, it's, that happens, and that's the way these big platforms, change. And we've seen that recently with TikTok, where there's some numbers the other day that was, basically 50% of TikTok users are now over the age of 30, which I reckon most people that you would say that to would be pretty shocked by that. And I think there's still this conception or like misconception in everyone's head. It's just like teenagers dancing and that's all TikTok is, where, there's so much more to it than that. And the audience is getting older as well. So they're like, we don't need a young audience, we're going after 30 plus. And it's like, well, actually, like, that's where the growth is happening. So I see that as, a really interesting place to kind of play. And, from a sports perspective, I think it's a great way to kind of, bring a new audience into, your club or your team, and show a bit more, of the personalities of, the goofing around, the, of pranks, of things that are happening, of, even there's a lot of those like viral challenges. And I feel that, I know like Parramatta and South in particular are pretty good from a rugby league perspective at, jumping on those challenges and just, giving people a chance to get to know the players a bit more, because I think, on those other platforms, it is a bit more polished, and it's a bit more, we don't get a chance to hear them talk and joke around with each other, which you can kind of do a bit more on TikTok. So, look, it's, I don't know, sometimes you might argue it's another platform to look at, another platform to worry about. We don't have time, we're under-resourced, and, there is limitations with it, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, for sure. I think in sport as well, there's, or in every industry, but obviously speaking purely about the sporting side of stuff, there's so many different competing strategic challenges, like from a content point of view. You need to sell your tickets, you need to engage a fan, you need to get the brand out there, you need to talk about the players, the team lineups, the football scores and things like that, but you also need to make money. And making money on social is one of those kind of, how do you do it? How do you do it well? How do you do it without logo slapping? How do you kind of, sell without doing the hard sell? And that's something that's talked about, across anyone that's in the social media space, anyone that's strategizing in this space. How do you kind of approach that with your clients in terms of those that are looking to equally invest in content and make content engaging and fun, but also on the flip side, how do you show an ROI and how can they make money in order to make those two things marry up? Because in most sporting organisations, I would say from the ones that we've worked with, there's a bit of a misbalance there where it's like, we're not going to actually invest heavily in this content because we can't show a direct ROI on each piece that's going out. So how do we try and balance the scale here and show that investing in the content actually does drive, in turn, a return on investment, even if you can't see it immediately by each post that you're putting out?
Yeah, look, that's probably like the $1 million question, isn't it? And I'm sure like everyone that has, worked in social has had, this conversation before, where it is one of the hardest things is to quantify the benefits of it outside of, those raw numbers, which is, these social platforms, they're kind of bigger than ever. We can talk to people. We can do those, those jobs of converting sales, of driving website traffic, of getting people to other brand pages and all of that. But yeah, it's definitely that question that is a really hard one to answer, because I don't know if there is, there's not an easy answer. And for me, sometimes it's just explaining some of the numbers and going into a bit of detail about, what those numbers actually mean, and showing that these people are invested in our content. And, these people, when they're invested in our socials, they're going to be more likely to actually buy tickets. They're more likely to see when we talk about buying or promoting of tickets, like, those kind of benefits that I think people that don't work in social potentially don't understand. And the same goes with, when you look to things like sponsored content, like you said, instead of just slapping a logo on your post, you can go, well, why don't I actually make some content that, is going to be interesting for people, that they're going to engage with, they're going to share, and have the brand, worked more seamlessly into this than, just a photo of someone. And I'm seeing that across the board now with all kind of brand sponsorships. It's like, influencers of the past used to hold up the product and say, hey, buy this product and use my 20% off code. And that was what we did. Whereas now it's like, we want to see them using that product and talking through all the different ways of how they're using their teeth whitening products, or like whatever it is. They might have a few jokes in there, and it's really about like, for me, I don't think influencers really exist anymore. They're more content creators, and content creators are the ones that are going to be able to sell products better because, it's interesting and relevant and fun. And, people like Matty J is a really good example of that, who is like an ex-Bachelor guy, and he now does, some like sponsored, like really good short little video sponsored content posts that I think it's just a good example of the types of things you can do, for a brand in a really like socially friendly way. So I think there's a lot of kind of learning to do, and almost like teaching, in terms of the wider parts of, of a club or a team, because, more often than not, it's probably the sales team coming down and saying, hey, we sold this package, you have to do this photo for us. And then it's like, well, we know that's not going to work. It's actually more beneficial if we invest a little bit more money, because more people will actually see and be exposed to it, and therefore more likely to click to the sponsors page or to go and visit a website or whatever that is. So yeah, look, that's...
Sorry, I was going to say, it's definitely investing in the conversations and education around that stuff, rather than like our initial immediate reaction would just be, as content creators, frustration and lack of, no, we're not doing it because it doesn't make any sense. But I think we've definitely seen the benefit of trying to step a little bit away, use the numbers to help you define your storyline, but obviously don't rely on them heavily, because they're not always going to tell the full picture of a story. But taking brands and, different teams who aren't exposed to content day in and day out on the journey of why content is important, why it makes sense, what its purpose is, what its role is, how it's fitting into like the broader spectrum of platforms and social channels is super beneficial. And I think it's the only way you can actually get real alignment internally and collaboration in business units with inside businesses that have competing priorities. So I think there's definitely a data element to it. There's definitely numbers there that can help, but I think your gut feeling and your industry experience and your intuition is also worth trying to quantify in a sense to be able to help that conversation along.
Yeah, I personally, I found the shift from influencer type accounts to the actual content creators themselves. You got Olin Teckers, who's massive on TikTok and Instagram Reels. He's now working with Parramatta quite closely. He's one of the podcast hosts. You've got accounts like Bloke in a Bar, Dennis Camp with he's been going for quite a while, and he's one of the best in the business. Hello Sport, Rugby League Guru, even someone who I'm pretty sure you work with, NRL Physio. There's so much more content out there for people to consume that's not directly coming from a club, and there's more of a collaboration approach.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And one of the things I've really loved, obviously being a Parramatta fan, but I've loved seeing the way that they've kind of teamed up with these content creators, like probably mainly in the last couple of months. Like they've obviously got I think the podcast only launched pretty recently. But yeah, having Olin Teckers on there, he's obviously got that massive following that he can bring in. He gets content as well. They've even given away a couple of those like sideline tickets to Rugby League Guru and I think it was part of their podcast. So they kind of had a giveaway to win tickets there. And so, usually as a club, if you're like, oh, we got tickets to a game, it's like, most clubs I don't think are going to think, let's give them to a content creator and think about those benefits of the content creator coming and making a bunch of content of the game and showing that game day experience and how good it is. Like that is, the ultimate promotion for their, whatever that like Bankwest sideline experience is called. But, there was some awesome content with it. I think they even did like a collaboration with Guru where I think he got brushed by Hopgood in the first time that he was there, and the second time, like Hopgood came up and gave him like a high five, and so it was just like something super light and fun. But understanding that Guru with his 70,000 followers or whatever, like he's an influential voice in the game. He's not your traditional TV guy or an ex-player. He's someone that just people like to listen to, and involving those people as part of your a club strategy, I think is just super smart, and I think you're going to see more of that in the future with clubs kind of realising that.
They're so relatable, these types of guys. Like even the NRL roast got a massive following now. He recently went up to Queensland for the No Limit fight. He works closely with KO. There's just so many opportunities for these people that have put so much time and effort into their own personal brands over the last few years, and it's really starting to pay off. And it's exciting to see these guys come up and, I wouldn't say take on the Channel 9s and Foxes, etc., but just they're more complementary, and I just think it's really cool to see them more involved.
I think it's just there's now, like you said, there's more content than ever, and so we as businesses, as brands, as content creators, like we also have to be better than ever with our content as well, which is the kind of tricky thing where there's so many other ways that people can get information about things that the things that we used to do where for a club or for a TV channel, we'd be the only ones providing that information, whereas now there's all these other people out there that can provide it in a different way. It's a bit more real. Like a lot of these shows, they like even swear, and they like they talk more openly about things because they can. And it's a really like different landscape over the last couple of years compared to I guess what we've been used to. Those like traditional voices are definitely changing.
Looking ahead to like the future of social, I think is probably something that we're all trying to figure out what the next best thing is. What should we be adopting? What should we be trying to learn about? For us in the creative space, AI and things like that is starting to rear its head a little bit more and more and more, and we're trying to make sure that we are keeping abreast of what's going on in that space, but without trying to scare ourselves too much to take the leap and be fully versed in AI. Similar in other industries and with like ChatGPT and things like that. So what is your take on what's happening in social content specifically, and what are you kind of coaching your clients through or working through them with in terms of strategic priorities in the next kind of 12 to 24 months when you know all this stuff's kind of bubbling under the surface?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. And I saw it when taking behind the curtain, but in the rundown, and I was like, oh, AI, like that is a good question. And it is something that I'm thinking about more because you kind of have to, and you're seeing all the examples of things that people are doing and making, and, I saw something the other day, like they made like a virtual avatar of themselves talking and made a bunch of reels that was not them. It was, done by AI of them like talking about specific topics. And I was like, that is insane. So I think for me at the moment, I kind of don't really know where this will go. And it seems to like just be evolving like really fast as well. Like it seems like every couple of weeks you see like a tweet about the things you can do and you're like, oh, geez, I didn't think like would be at that stage like so quickly. So there's a part of that is I'm just kind of, I guess, taking a step back and just seeing, trying to stay across things, but not, probably like you both, like not investing fully and going all into AI, because I think at this stage it's still, and probably it's going to be hard for AI to really do the really like specific things that we can do, like, have that specific tone that we want, use the right words, know the exact right piece of content to use on our social channels. And I see it being more of like a complementary feature to what we do, like, coming up with different caption ideas for a post, I think is, such an obvious great use of, like a chat GPT, for example. But I think that like human element and like us knowing the right way to say things and even just saying it in our own way, I think, the tone of voice for a brand is so important, and we need to know, how we talk. And I don't think, chat GPT can nail that every time, at least at this stage. So it's a bit of like maybe that, AI can develop a couple of ideas and then we tweak those to make it actually really suit our brand. And it'd be interesting if, like, I do feel like people are going to go too heavily into AI and then it's going to become really obvious that like this is just, and maybe not obvious, but if you do some digging, it might be like, yeah, we can tell that this was done by AI. And I saw something the other day when this is just came to my head, but when Novak Djokovic won the French Open, and Tsitsipas, the Greek guy, he tweeted like a congratulatory message, and someone put the text, like put a prompt into ChatGPT, and it was like word for word what he tweeted, and it was like, yeah, great, you just like congratulations, legend, big achievement or something, and then it was literally word for word what he had tweeted, and I was like, that's dangerous. So I think we need to be cautious about not just letting computers do everything for us. But maybe I'm just naive and like worried that I'm going to be out of a job and don't want to lose my work to
I think it's definitely, as you said, there's a balance of being able to use it to your benefit in terms of either sparking creative thought or getting if you're in like a bit of a brain fog or whatever, and you just need something to kind of give you a starting point. I think what it doesn't do obviously is gives like the human instinct and the personality and things like that. So the downside of it is that we become a society of Canva templates and chat GPT captions, when they should really just be there to help start the creative process, and you're still going to need human instinct and personality and skill sets to be able to make that stuff, more than just generic and lackluster kind of content pieces. So there is a scary thought that we become completely lazy, and we do fall into that trap. But I think we need to make sure that we use it effectively as an extension of what we're already doing as creatives, but not rely on it so it becomes the only output.
You should have had AI design your Art of the Game artwork and see what it came up with.
Oh, we might do that.
We might have to.
How do you know we didn't already?
Yeah.
No,
I was going to make that joke, but I thought it was a bit mean. I was like, no, it's a bit...
No, it's definitely not. But we can give it a go, and we can...
Yeah, one of our talented designers has whipped this one up for us. We love it. But
what's your thought on the name?
I like the art being like kind of arty as well, like with the different fonts. It's a nice touch.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, there's a few bits and pieces
art
in
as-
there.
Yeah.
Sort of talks to, sport, content, creative, bit of everything.
Yeah.
So I think it is an art as well. Like we often forget that. Like
Yes, exactly.
even just when I talk to a lot of businesses, there's a lot of knowledge that we have that you kind of forget as well. And when you're talking about these things, and even just simple things like, we need to post engaging content on Instagram. People are like, oh yeah, I've always just thought of it as like a tool to sell my business, but there is like a real art to it. And even just then it's going, well, how do you make like an interesting image or photo or video? And a lot of people don't just have that kind of instinct about how to do it. It definitely is, a skill, I guess. And something I have to remind myself all the time that, it's not an easy thing to do. While it feels natural for me, it's like not for everyone, because it's an art, you could say. So love it.
Oh, good. We should have got you to intro the podcast then with that little spiel. We're kind of
use that if
swapping.
you want.
We're kind
that clip out.
we're swapping compliments here. It's a nice little vibe going on.
It's a compliment sandwich, you could say.
A compliment sandwich.
Speaking
There
of
you go.
compliments, who are your go-tos in Australian sport at the moment for, leading the social media content space? Let's speak, NRL and AFL are on at the moment. Let's talk to them. Is anyone standing out for you?
Yeah, I think kind of mentioned them already, but Parramatta, and I always wonder, because I'm, as a Para fan, am I biased to their content? Obviously, I'm more exposed to their posts because I'll just naturally see them as a fan. But I think I'm probably more critical of what they do as a fan, because I'm looking at so many posts and being like, is this good or is this bad? But I think they've been pretty good at, again, involving those content creators and coming up with different ways of presenting information, which I think is always a good thing. A couple of their recent player signings were just, always love a good different way of, announcing that you're signing a player. I think the Joe Offengawi one was pretty cool, with like a bit of a Snapchat location style video. Always enjoy the Rabbitohs, and I think their TikTok in particular is really good. And that's again just a good example of like using the players, showing their personality and their their humor and their style. I always like to see their post. I think they had a good one a couple of weeks ago with kind of playing off the fact that they had a buy, and it was like the classic like scene from a movie. I can't remember what the movie was, but I remember it was a really good post. So they're two that kind of stand out from a rugby league perspective. I can't think of any AFL ones because I don't watch too much of it. I do see some of their content as they come across. I know I usually look at Collingwood because I think they have a pretty good team there of people. And I think they're doing pretty well in terms of like their position on the ladder, which always helps when your team's winning. You can have a bit more fun with the content. But in terms of those two from a rugby league perspective, I also think on a more extreme level, the Newtown Jets actually do a really good job with their content, and really kind of almost leaning into like the shithouse style content. And like I saw the other obviously we're just off the back of Origin 2, and there was that Jerome Luai Instagram image that everyone was like losing their mind over, and they just like really roughly replaced some of the words and said, basically, come and watch the game this weekend. So you can go and check that post out. But I thought that was just like so like finger on the pulse with like what people are talking about, but then turning it into a way of saying, come to our game this weekend, but in a fun way. So I think they do a good job at the kind of punching above their weight of
definitely. I
compared
think
to those bigger teams.
Being relatable.
I think the notable thing, especially with the first three clubs that you mentioned, is they're very well resourced. They're probably the three, particularly the Eels and the Rabbits, they've got a really good social media manager or head of content, and they've got a good team structure. There's multiple designers, a couple of video editors, social producers, where there's some clubs in both leagues that are incredibly under-resourced. They're one-man bands running around like headless chooks, and they don't have the time to create the cool, fun content. So it's interesting that you do mention those clubs because they are the big dogs and ones that place more value and importance on content.
I think the other one, and we've spoken about the Titans as well, but yeah, Gold Coast Titans, I think they're probably one of the smaller clubs from my understanding of like how they're resourced, but they do a pretty good job at their, you know, their style of content and the way that they kind of present things. And I think we are kind of also in a world where, you know, those, and even sometimes like Para do those really slick, like, you know, training videos where it's all like really cool edits and it's like really well produced and polished. But like, honestly, my favorite content from like the Rabbitohs, for example, is, you know, like Latrell Mitchell trying to kick a goal from out wide. And there's like a few players and they cheer him when he kicks like a goal. And it's like, you know, just super short. It's shot on an iPhone versus like, you know, a camera, like that kind of content where it's a little bit more raw and, you know, it's a bit more rough, but it's just like, you know, as a fan, I like to see those things that go on. I like to hear the players talk, you know, normally, not like, you know, speaking in cliches like they do after games. That's a bit of a shot at players. Sorry if anyone's
credit to the boys.
But you know, like that kind of like real content, I think is an opportunity because it is low time and low cost content that you know, for an under-resourced team. You know, if I was a one-man team, I'd be like, I'm just going to stick my phone in front of people and at training, and that's going to be our content, rather than, you know, spending half a day pulling together like a really well-polished, you know, really well-produced video. But yeah, the resourcing is always an interesting one, and it is good that some of those teams are, you know, we're at a stage now where there's more resources being put into, you know, the content side of things. So I think for a long time it was, you know, you'd be lucky to have a 2-person team for, you know, any social media team, probably in, you know, in sport, I know in TV, we were lucky to have 2 people on anything. So yeah, now that there's actually some teams that are resourced better is pretty awesome.
Definitely an ongoing topic for most of our clients. But yeah, Edwin, we're going to leave it there, I think. Did you just want to give a little shout out to Social Sandwich social handles or anything? Where can everyone find you?
How do they find you?
I'm at the Social Sandwich on all good social media platforms. I think I'm actually Social Sandwich _ on Twitter, which always bugs me because I like that consistency everywhere. But yeah, probably Instagram's the main one, and then and I do a bit more like in the Twitter space, a bit more, I guess, critique and a bit more savage there, I reckon, where Instagram's a bit more polished. But yeah, so if you want a bit more of the unfiltered view, the old Twitter's a good one. But yeah, come say hello. Always love to talk about socials, and always love when people send me stuff as well. That's always nice when people are like, oh, did you see this? And because I think everyone expects everyone to see every piece of content that's ever happened, where it's like I barely see, you know, my own posts, let alone others. So it's always good. I always like being sent content to kind of either really good content or not so good content where you can go, oh, that sucks. Like, what is wrong with them? Why are they doing that? So yeah.
I would definitely recommend going to Edwin's social pages for a raw and unfiltered view on
absolute dribble,
traditional, strategic, and dribble, and some good party shirts. So
there is a lot of dribble. It's true.
No, it's very valuable.
Valuable dribble. I'll take that.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been super insightful and valuable, and we'll have to get you back for some 2024 social tips and predictions when it gets closer to the time. So that's just a bit of a warning shot in advance.
Thanks for having me, and good luck with the show. It's good to be on, and I'll be back soon if you have me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Good.